So 7 political parties will next month hold a national convention to forge a way forward for a moonshot pact ahead of the 2024 polls. The parties believe that the ANC is experiencing a decline in support, thus giving them leverage to unseat the ANC. Earlier this year, Democratic Alliance leader John Steenhuisen had a fallout with other parties after he presented his version of a moonshot pact, with the parties saying they were not consulted. He has expressed confidence that should the national convention go well, the ANC will be out of power next year, and the EFF along with them. Let's discuss this with political analyst Dr Piet Croucamp. Thank you very much, Doc, for your time this afternoon. So it would appear that the DA is calling on the spirit of CODESA, using the same venue for its conference on the 17th of August, starting then. How well did CODESA work for South Africa, if we start by reflecting on that?
Well, with CODESA, we actually managed to negotiate amongst the contenders, the historical adversaries. We managed to negotiate a real new, very, very different political regime, economic as well as political regime, in the constitution that we have today over time. So I think they use the venue because it's symbolically enormously powerful. It shows the progress that we can make if we're willing to reach compromises. I am not sure that this moonshot pact negotiations can be compared to that particular event. But I think that it's a symbolic start. But the future of the moonshot pact might be very, very different from that of the CODESA agreement, which I think most South Africans at the time had significant consensus that is what's good for us. We deserve a new constitution and a new political regime. Now we're more uncertain about exactly what we need. We have less consensus about what is good for the future. I think it's a little bit more complicated than they make it out to be.
A tad bit more complicated either way. So John Steenhuisen speaks of the Democratic Alliance having a proven track record of good, clean and accountable governance. How truthful is that? We just heard from the mayor of the city of Tshwane, Celia Brink. We know what happened with the previous disgraced mayor, Randall Williams, under the DA leadership.
Look, the DA does govern a lot better, especially if it's middle-class neighborhoods and if it's white middle class, if it's affluent neighborhoods. They do govern those areas much better. One has to say, you just have to drive around Gugulethu and Yanga and Crossroads in the Western Cape to see that for many of the people there, nothing has changed, or not much has changed. But having said that, the current mayor, Jordan Hill-Lewis, has, I think for the first time, has changed the way that he spent his budget. And I think the most of his budget now is being spent in areas where it wasn't traditionally spent. It's spent in areas where the need. If I say no, the DA, when they say they govern well, they govern very specific areas well. I have to say that sometimes some individuals can make a big difference. And Jordan Hill-Lewis is certainly making a big difference by changing the narrative and spending the money of the rich people actually on the poor. So in that respect, they still have a long way to go. In many of these areas, the poverty is still extreme. But I think if you get the mindset of the politician halfway, then you can work with something. So I would think in Cape Town, at least the minds have changed about how the budget should be spent. But it's still a long way to go before the poor areas are being considered as important politically. Just remember, these areas are not necessarily his political constituency. It is unlikely that the people living in these areas will vote for him. To spend your budget there on people that will not vote for you, maybe they will vote for you if you do it well, but generally they don't vote for him. I think that's moral courage.
What does that mean?
It means that he has to go contrary to what I think the wishes of most of the people that vote for him is. He has to say to the people that actually pay their taxes because they want to keep him in power, he must say to them, I will spend this money on people that will not necessarily keep me in power. And I think that requires courage, that requires a moral realignment of what politicians naturally do. They want to spend their authority, their sources, and whatever they have, they want to allocate it to those people that are most likely to vote for them. And I think if they act to the contrary, I think it has to be commended.
Okay, let's take a look at the IFP, Freedom Front Plus, Action SA, United Independent Movement, as well as Spectrum National. These are the parties that have rallied around the Democratic Alliance. We do not know whether it's an equal seat at the table, but how do you actually see the Moonshot Pact working itself out, especially when John Steenhuisen speaks of the numbers, right, to say this is what we are coming to the table with, this is what the IFP is coming to the table with, etc.
Look, if they get all these parties they have together, if you add up all the votes that they can get and you add another 7% in growth, you get to around about 35%. There is no likeliness, unless almost all South Africans stay away from the voting booth next year, or unless we get something around about 45% of voter turnout. There is no chance that moonshot parties will eventually win an election with 51%. They won't. They don't have the support for that. And that's why I say, unless they have the philosophy that Rise Mzansi has, for instance, to say that we have to go beyond existing political parties. We have to get civil society movement. We will have to convince South Africans as a whole that South Africa deserves better. They deserve better. We'll have to start a new philosophy. And we will have to get people who do not vote for the ANC to vote for us, who have been alienated from the ANC. If you remember correctly, in 2021, of the eligible vote, in other words, all the people between 18 and 108 who are allowed to vote in South Africa, were allowed to register and vote. Only 12% of them voted for the ANC, which means 88% of South Africans voted for other parties or they didn't vote at all. That shows you that there's a degree of alienation in the liberation movement, and that a certain section of society, a significant section of society, their minds can be changed to an alternative. Up to now, the existing opposition political parties, I think, the members or the people who traditionally voted for the ANC do not see them as an alternative to the ANC. You have to position yourself that people say you are an alternative and we will invest in you as far as our future is concerned. For that, I think the existing political parties are not empowered to do that. For that, you have to get a new philosophy. And I have to confess, I'm excited about the ideas that Zongeza Zibi pronounced on saying we have to tell South Africa, if you deserve better, give us your support. We will eventually form and articulate a policy framework which will be compliant with the needs of the poorest of the poor, or those who vote for us, the working class, the low working class, and the 40+% people who either have no work or have given up on finding work. I think you need a new philosophy, and the existing political parties have. The Moonshot Pact does not represent that philosophy to me, and I don't think to the voters too.
Thank you very much to political analyst Dr. Piet Croucamp.